January 10th. We aim to please. My altar is more or less back to its old state after my little mishap. That's a relief. I like the new element on your shrine. It speaks to me, as you sometimes very aptly say. I thought so. I had found beautiful feathers in 2020, especially when the harpy was my interview partner. Really big ones, bird of prey feathers and a reddish-brown duck feather. But they were just lying around. I had no idea how to incorporate them into my altar. Now I bought some modeling clay and formed a base into which I pricked them in the shape of a fan. The whole thing looks very Native American now, almost like a micro headdress, but with a base at the bottom. As soon as the clay is dry, I will paint it. It makes me happy to tinker with my altar, especially now that I have fireproof glass plates all over the surface. It's better that way. No one can really take you by the hand because druids and medicine people are extremely rare in your country. But still, you're doing well. The pagan cycle of the year will become second nature to you at some point. And even if you were to consciously reject all the festivals like Beltane and Imbolc, you would still know their meaning much better. You don't only find meaning within you, even though the search within is a significant part of development. The search happens on the outside too, and in the past. For too long you wanted to have nothing to do with that past. But if you don't look into the past, you only anticipate the future, then you have no roots. Or, strictly speaking, you have them, but you don't want to admit it. Oh, that's why this one sentence bothered me so much. Around Christmas time, I was supposed to write season's greetings for someone else. They wanted the following sentence. We only look forward and hope for a better 2021. It bothered me all these weeks, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Now it's clear to me. It causes stress in your bodies to only ever look forward, because not only do you deny where you've been, and thus how you got to the present point, where you're hopefully smarter and more experienced than before, but you also don't acknowledge how much you've accomplished. In your context, the sender of that message meant to say, we don't want to whine, and that's okay. But there is a significant difference between complaining and acknowledging the valley you've been through. That is one of the many things your society got very wrong nowadays. The past is simply the period where you were not yet so aware, so empathetic, smart, or careful. You only need to be ashamed of it if nothing has changed until now, and if nothing likely will change in the near future either. That is exactly your problem. You do not look at the past so that the present and the future hurt less. You act like a child, putting his hands in front of his eyes and saying, "You can't find me." Standing next to this kid, you want to laugh or cry, depending on the severity of the topics at hand. And we are always standing next to you. Whoa, that's so typical. Somehow, you know these things in your heart, and then it's directly in front of you as a paragraph of text. And you go, wow, I knew it. Well, we aim to please. Yes, that's an interesting sentence to use. It's an art reference. You love those. It's from a character who has held up a mirror to millions of people, and not a very pleasant one. I'd say I didn't know gods watched or read 50 Shades of Grey, but I know that there's nothing that escapes you. The man in this novel has more in common with me than most people know. He has an animal nature, an inner beast that cannot be tamed. He is a symbol for all those who suppress an enormous, seemingly destructive force within themselves every day. He channels it in quite a smart and legal way, and he must, because there is no room in your world for serious excess. There is no time in your life, in your existence, in your education, or in your development, apart from the miserable carnival, which comes from carne, meat, and where you can let the pig loose, as they say so delightfully in German. You will discover, slowly but surely, how damaging all these suppressed feelings and instincts are to your civilization. January 11th, Berserker Souls. I'd like to know more about the untamable monster within, please, my dearest Cernunnos. Would you be so kind and tell me more about it? You do know what a berserker is, don't you? Yes? Well, the pop culture reference, I'm afraid, but yeah. Where are they today? I guess the general perception is that they're extinct as a people, that there was no longer room for the way of life and other more understanding kinds of peoples have prevailed. This is not true. Divine balance teaches otherwise. Everything that can, by any means, hold itself in your bodily forms must exist. And I mean that literally. Ask Jormungandr, he could tell you a lot about this. The berserkers are still there. They may have been pushed out of public perception by artists, thinkers, and others, but they are there. Many of your social problems come from denying this simple truth. The berserkers are in your midst. And not as bankers or as other system parasites. That would be far too inconspicuous. How do you define a berserker then? How exactly does this characteristic manifest itself? A berserker knows only two states: unconditional loyalty to the things and people their heart has chosen, and absolute destruction of everything that does not meet their highest standards. That sounds a lot like rioting, though. I'll give you a few examples from your daily life so we can talk about this some more. There was this film recently with a little girl. It was called Systemsprenger in German. The way that character is laid out, she has the soul of a berserker. The very name of the film is German for system buster, like Ghostbuster. A human that will rather die than fit in. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with being brought up in a certain way, having a flaw in their brain chemistry, or anything else. The souls of berserkers are either convinced that everything is absolutely in balance, or they destroy everything in their path. They seek 100% honesty in all things, people and processes. They demand 100% authenticity. If you are insincere to them for a moment or cover anything up, they drag you to the guillotine. I'm not saying that being like this will get you somewhere in life. And as you can see, they themselves are not balanced, although they seek a certain kind of balance with all their heart. I only say these souls are still among you, and you would do well to at least recognize them. Because, as we all know, understanding a situation is indeed the first step to improving it. So, where can you still find these berserker souls today then? Since you do not protect them from the company of insincere fellow human beings, and the community from them, the berserkers continue to exist among you. But these lives are rarely happy ones. They exist in the form of husbands who will rather kill their wives than let her come down from the pedestal he put her on. For example, because she chooses another partner or generally another way of life. They live among you as students who literally trample all authority and tear down everything others built, be it the school's own organic farm or a nicely painted wall. And of course, as highly patriotic fighters for their country in every army of your world. They seem like ticking time bombs to me, to be honest. That can be a very fitting description. They come at you like an avalanche when you incur their wrath. However, people now have sensors and strategies on how to deal with avalanches before they swallow up a village. A lot of money is pumped into these non-military warning systems against storms, tsunamis, and avalanches. It is sad to see that you hardly apply the same mechanisms to humans, or not at all. And I do not mean the system of law and police here. Their effect on the berserker comes far too late. For berserkers are by all means servants of balance, and of course of the universal balance, not their definition of it. If they did not serve all that is, they would not exist. They would not incarnate again, here or anywhere else. Berserker souls are the first to ridicule the emperor's new clothes, as the charade, the fairy tale describes. They don't bend to your will, and you cannot convince them of anything, unless you catch them in their absolute cultural core, in their heart, in their loyalty and promise that things will be different in the future, more authentic. Well, do you know anyone who fits that description very well right now? Well, I do know of a certain ex-politician of the US right now who fits this bill. I don't usually include political topics here in my diary, and why would I? But in the first days of January 2021, his supporters launched an attack on an important building and wanted to take over their own lawmaking organ by brute force. This man knows exactly how to talk to berserker souls, and above all, he knows how many of them lie dormant in his country. He is a clever tactician, that must be acknowledged. He is not stupid, not at all. He just speaks a completely different language than the maintainers of the status quo. So what can you do if you don't want the berserkers to overrun everything? What can you do in the early stages? Give the berserkers something to destroy. What? Back in the days, when I still had some authority in a village community, there was a simple rule. If a man was about to explode from anger, he was sent into the forest and allowed to cut down any tree he liked. The bigger the better. None of the sacred trees, of course. They had to be able to control themselves that much, or otherwise they would have lost their heads. But the forest was big and the choice almost endless. And just the prospect of being allowed to go into the forest for a few days and wreak havoc on it helped that man. They were allowed to let off steam. They didn't have to bring the wood, they didn't have to hunt an animal on the way out, and they didn't have any other requirement. They were simply asked to get themselves back into a condition that could be dealt with. And now tell me, where in your world is that possible today? Well, nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. So a first step would be very simple indeed. There are always those who want to create something. They want to build. It doesn't matter if they instruct others to build a freestanding roof for a car, or if they nail wood together more or less without instruction. If you were to say to these people, do it, go build a structure, you just have to live with the fact that after you, the berserkers will be allowed to tear it all down again. Then both parts of a whole could totally live to their heart's content, feel total happiness and euphoria. For a price of what? A few logs a month? Wood that you could still chuck into your ovens at night to keep you warm? A rule or a place like this, that would help your society to move forward, as nonsensical as it may sound to some of you.